Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the discriminant of a quadratic equation. So we have some terms here or vocab first before we jump into some examples. So first we have the word roots. So roots are otherwise called the zeros, or it's otherwise called the x-intercept. So these three words that I have highlighted, roots, zeros, x-intercepts, are actually just the same thing in math. So this is where a function is equal to 0, or otherwise called as a solution to an equation. So the value of x where the graph of the function crosses the x-axis. So that's why it's called the x-intercept. It is the point where the graph crosses the x-axis. We call it as roots, zeros, or x-intercept. Just a reminder here that there are two types of roots. So the first type of root is the real roots. So real roots are the ones that crosses the x-axis. Well, the other type of root is an imaginary roots. So the other one is imaginary roots. Again, the real roots are the ones that crosses the x-axis. So let me write that down. So it crosses the x-axis. So these are the two types of roots, real root and imaginary roots. There is another term that we have here. We have discriminant. Discriminant is the term underneath the square root of the quadratic equation. This tells us the number and the type of roots of a quadratic equation. To better understand this, I have prepared a picture here with a graph and the possible solution to a quadratic equation. So first, we have here the discriminant of a quadratic equation is this part right here. This is our discriminant. So that's how I got the equation for discriminant here as b squared equals 4ac. There are three types of solution in a quadratic equation. So what are these three types? First, we have when a quadratic equation, this parabola right here, whenever the parabola is above the x-axis, that means it does not have any root, because again, root refers to the x-intercept. So there's no x-intercept because it doesn't cross the x-axis. We can tell that there's no x-intercept if the discriminant is less than 0. So when we do the math and we get a discriminant of 0, then that means that the graph is above the x-axis, or in some other cases, the graph can also be underneath the x-axis and it does not cross the x-axis. So again, that's when the discriminant is 0. When the discriminant is 1, so when we solve the discriminant using this formula over here, and then we come up with a discriminant of 0, that means that it crosses or it touches the x-axis one time only. Well, if the discriminant, when we solve the discriminant and it's greater than 0, it means that there are two roots here. So these are two roots here, and then it touches the x-axis twice. So in here, it doesn't touch the x-axis, but we call that root as the imaginary roots. Okay, let's have an example to better see how do we use the discriminant to determine the shape of the graph. So let's take this example right here. So we have 7x squared minus 5x minus 3. So our task is to determine the discriminant and we describe the shape of the graph. So here we determine the a, b, and c first. So our a here is 7. Our b is, so this is the a, this is the b, and this is the c. So our b is negative 5 and our c is positive 3. So then we solve for the discriminant. Discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. We plug in the values. In order that we can solve for discriminant really fast and we can do it correctly, we change all the variables into a parenthesis first before we put in the values. So that means we put the parentheses here first, minus 4, parentheses, and parentheses. And we can put the values in. Again, please change them in parentheses first before you plug it in. So our b is negative 5, our a is 7, and our c is 3. So then from here, we can simplify this. This is negative 5 times negative 5 is 25. And then 4 times 7 times 3 is 84. So minus 84. So then this is negative 59 is our discriminant. Now, if we go back to the shapes that we talked about at the beginning, so if the discriminant is less than 0, then that means there is no real root. So I'm just gonna write all these three here. So no real root. And then the other description for this is there are two imaginary roots. And then the third description that I can put in here is that it does not cross the x-axis. Okay, so it does not cross the x-axis. So this time around, I would encourage you to pause this video and try this problem out on your own. And when you're done, unpause it and check your answer. Okay, so we go over this problem here. So it's pretty much the same thing. We are going to determine the A, B, and C. So that's the A, that's the B, and that's the C. So then we have our A is 1, our B is 2, and our C is negative 15. So then we go ahead and plug it into the formula. Discriminant is B squared minus 4AC. So then we change the letters into a parentheses before we plug in values. Our B is 2, our A is 1, and our C is negative 15. And so from here, we do the math. So this, by the way, this is supposed to be squared. So that is 2 squared is 4. Then we multiply these three together. So negative 4 times 1 times negative 15 is a positive 60. And so we got a 64 for our discriminant. And so we look at the rule that we have at the beginning. So if it's greater than 0, so this is the shape of the graph. So there's gonna be, so I'm just gonna write it out. So two distinct real root, and it touches the x-axis twice. So in here, there are still roots over here, but then it's imaginary. This one is a real. Real root means it crosses the x-axis. This one, it does not cross the x-axis, but there's still, we call it as imaginary root, which we're going to talk about it in the next section that we will have. Did you get the same answer as this? Good. Perfect. Now let's have another equation here wherein the equation is not in standard form. So let's take this first example right here. So what are we going to do is to change this to standard form first. So this would be plus 2x squared. So plus 2x squared. And then what are we doing right now is we're combining like terms. So minus 7x and then minus 7x. So then our equation would come out, because we wanted the right side to be equal to 0. So then we cross this out, so we're left with 4x squared minus 8x is equal to negative 4. Again, we want the right side to be 0. So we go ahead and add 4 from both sides plus 4 here, and that makes the right side equal to 0. So that is 4x squared minus 8x plus 4 equals 0. So then our A here is, so I can write, I'm just going to write the parts here. So our A here is 4, our B is negative 8, and our C is 4. So then we're ready to plug it into the formula for discriminant so that we can describe the shape of the graph. So discriminant is B squared minus 4AC. So again, we changed the letters into parentheses before we plug it in. So that's 4 parentheses, parentheses. Our B is negative 8. Our A is 4. And our C is 4. So then we go ahead, and by the way, this is squared, so that's B squared. So this is negative 8 times negative 8 is 64. minus 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. So the discriminant here is 0. So we go back to the rule that we have here, and then I'm just, so it, since the discriminant is 0, so it's gonna fall within this. It's gonna touch the x-axis one time only. So my description here would be, I'm just gonna write this out. So that is 1 real root. And then the other description for this is it touches the x-axis at 1 point only. So that's the description that I write. So it's just gonna be in the first part of this video. So how to write the description. At this time, I would encourage you to pause this video and try this problem out on your own. And when you're done, unpause it and check your answer. Okay, so we go over this. So again, we are going to arrange them so that it's 0 on the right side. So that is a minus 2x squared minus 2x squared. And then this is gonna come out, that's negative x squared minus 5 equals, then we cross this out, negative x. So I'm just gonna add x from both sides, plus x and plus x here. So then this becomes a 0 on this side. So negative x squared plus x minus 5 equals 0. So then from here, we can tell that our a is negative 1, our b is 1, and our c is negative 5. And so we use the formula for discriminant, that is b squared minus 4ac. So the b that we have, we're going to change the letters into parentheses and put the values in. So that's parentheses, and then we put the c. So our b here is 1. Our a is negative 1. So it should have been a negative 1 right here. So a was negative 1. And then our c is negative 5. And so we do the math here. This 1 squared is just 1. And then negative 4 times negative 1 times negative 5 is a negative 20. So then we have a negative 19 as our discriminant. So we look it up on the description that we have here. So negative 19 is less than 0. So then we can go ahead and write no real roots. So the roots are imaginary. Again, there are two types of roots. The first type of root is imaginary, and the other type of root is real root. So there's no real root for this. And then there's two imaginary roots. Two imaginary roots. And it does not cross the x-axis. And then does not cross the x-axis. Did you get the same answer as this? Good. Perfect. If you find this video helpful, hit like and subscribe for more math videos. See ya!